MySQL Workbench is a unified visual tool and the primary administrative interface for accessing and configuring MySQL databases. In this video, I'll show you how to get started in configuring your user preferences for the MySQL Workbench. I'll also show you how to access the server configuration and set the values to your desired state.
Now that our install has completed, then the final step of install was to launch the Workbench. Now, if you did not have that on, then you can certainly just launch the Workbench like any other program. And in Windows Server 2012 that we're running on here, you can just go to your start screen, just start typing MySQL, and there you see is your Workbench right there. So, when the Workbench loads, what you'll find is that we have some shortcuts over here on the right-hand side, and you can just click on any one of these to help get you started. And most notably, what you'll find is under the MySQL document library, you'll find that there's quite a lot of content here that you can browse through just to help get going. Now, you see here MySQL Workbench introduction is there, what's new in this version 6.0, the additions that are available, installing and launching, and there you see is a getting started tutorial. So if you want to kind of just familiarize yourself with the overall environment, then I do recommend that you have a look at that getting started tutorial. You see there's administering, creating a model, adding data to your databases, and so on. Now, if you're already comfortable and familiar maybe with database environments in general, or maybe an earlier version, certainly would not have to go through any of these options, but there's a lot of content here to help you get started. You can see it's just tabbed browsing here like most applications these days, so we can just close this at any time, no problem, and it just brings us back to our home screen. Now, as far as getting in and seeing what has been installed and just getting familiar with the initial configuration, you see that there's a local instance of the MySQL service running right here, and you can create additional connections by clicking on your plus sign here, and you can just create a new connection to any other databases that you might have running by whichever method over which ports and IP addresses and so on. And if it's just a local installation, then you can just choose that option right there, local sockets and pipe. Whatever it is that you need to connect to. This is just simply to establish some kind of administrative connection to any other instance of any other database. So we don't need to do any of that right now, but you can have as many connections as you want, and they'll all just show up here on the screen. So I can just click on the corner of this little option right here, and it just gives you some of the basic properties about the connection itself. So I can edit it right there, or I can just initiate the connection. But if I do just want to initiate that, all I have to do is just click on this little box here, and I just have to enter in the password. And I can choose to save that password as well, so we'll hit OK. And there you see is our getting started workbench, if you will. So over here on the left-hand side, you see we've got options for server status, client connection, users and privileges, status and system variables, exporting, importing options, so on. Instance options here for starting and shutting down the service, the log files for the server itself. This isn't any of the database logs, just for the server. And since we did install the samples and examples, down here you see that we do in fact have 3 schemas available already. So for starters, let's just have a look at the server status. And here you can just make sure that everything is installed and running correctly. So this is the local instance you see here. Server status is running. It's just giving us obviously our standard values here for traffic and efficiency, queries per second. We don't have anything here. Obviously we just started this instance, so we're not really going to see any data, but gives you some pretty useful information right there. The performance options and availability of various features are all listed here, and the directories where the install was performed right there as well. The disk space that's in use and or available, and just all kinds of options as to how this particular server has been configured. We can verify if there are any client connections, so everything here is the local host, our root user, so we don't have any other clients that are connected. But we can also see which users are connected and what kind of privileges that they might have. So there's quite a lot of information just right here on your management option. If we want to have a look at some of the databases that were supplied, for example, we can go to the test one and see which tables are included in that. So we can just expand any of these to see what's there. Nothing in test, and actually this is basically for you to use as a test environment. But there is some data in this world schema here, so we can expand this. And if we expand the tables, we'll see that there's city, country, and language. So these, again, are just the samples that have been included. So if you do want to see what's in there, you certainly can. We can, for example, choose the city table right here, and you can just right-click on this, and there are your shortcut options right there. So we can actually see some data by choosing selecting rows, limit of 1,000 in this case. And what that does is just issue out a fairly standard SQL statement here of select star from world.city, and there is the actual data itself, and there's all kinds of options that we can do with respect to that data directly in this editor right here, and we'll certainly be doing that much later as we move along. And it tells you our action output here, and there was the actual statement that was submitted and when it was submitted and the duration that it took for that. So it gives you all kinds of statistics. And obviously what we see up here are our options to create a new SQL tab for executing queries, and all of the standard options in terms of accessing the schema and the objects within any given database, creating connections to new databases, and so on. So it's pretty much a fairly standard database administrative interface. Just takes a bit of getting used to if you are new to the product. So we'll just close this option here. And again, you can close any tab at any time. There's no harm in doing that. So any of these can be shut down as well. And if you want to, you can just issue out your own select statement here to pull out really any data from any of these tables, which of course we'll be doing later on as well. And we'll just close this option and return back to our home page here. Under the Tools menu here, you do see Configuration, and there's options in terms of backing up any connections that you have defined and or restoring them. So if you made a number of connections here to several instances of multiple databases, then you can back those up and you can restore them if they are lost, because there's a fair amount of configuration information in the connection. So it could be time consuming to have to recreate them. There's your database options to connect to databases, manage the connections, and so on. A lot of options to get familiar with at this point, but we'll move through them all, and we will get started with actually doing some database administration in later modules.